10 days. 10 days until the presidential election night. With those 10 days remaining, will the president understand that he needs to send out second stimulus executive order checks, extend FPUC, and get relief to millions of Americans, and that blaming Nancy Pelosi won't win him the election seat? Moreover, what could happen with the House? What could happen with the Senate? And new poll numbers released overnight that suggests movement needs to be made right now. If not, stimulus could be really in doubt. For the first time ever, I'm going to be going over stuff you've never heard before, and this is 28. Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope you're good and safe. This is a continuation of Mornings LALATE that started at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with Early Mornings LALATE, then at 8:30 a.m. with Mornings, and now with 28. Big developing details about poll numbers, the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And the issue that I've never addressed really a lot in this channel until today, the issue of contesting the election. What could that do for your stimulus? Go to the Funds channel, subscribe, because I'm going to explain stuff you've never heard before that explains how and where you could get your stimulus based upon the results or non-results of election night. Also, like this video. 10 days away from the election night, and in this video I will be going over why the questions are now swirling more about what's going to happen in the next 10 days than even what could happen on day -1, the day after the election night, and what could happen between then and Inauguration Day. I'll be going over the new poll numbers overnight, new poll numbers about the House, new poll numbers about the Senate, and new poll numbers about the presidency, but I'll be going over the big twist and turn, which is a presidential contested election. Oh boy, and what could that mean for your stimulus? All right, let's get to the breaking news. The breaking news this morning is that the poll numbers are not going in favor of the Democrats. Excuse me, in favor of the Republicans. Messed that one up. Sorry, Nancy. Started making you a little nervous there. The numbers are not going in favor of the Republicans. New poll numbers overnight show that the Democrats could potentially take the Senate, take the House, and take the presidency. So what does this mean about your stimulus, and what are the poll numbers? Let's get to the breaking details. First, new poll numbers on the Senate. 80%, 80% chance of Democrats taking the Senate, says a new ABC poll overnight. Next, 96% chance of the Democrats taking the House, which they already currently have. Whether they'll expand in the House is really much of a non-issue. Rather, will they retain the House? 96% chance they would. Of course, President Donald Trump overnight said, I think we have a chance of taking the House. Well, maybe a 4% chance, according to ABC. Third, the presidency. 87% chance of Joe Biden winning the presidency. This poll number is not unusual, that basically it's putting the most likely event, the House remaining Democratic, and the most unlikely event of the three permutations, which is the Senate going Democratic. In the middle of the most likely events is the presidency going Democratic. So you have those three things, and three things to weigh out. Of course, poll numbers are wrong. Poll numbers could be incorrect. We've seen that before. The question is the margin of error. The question is how many things can happen. But in this video, I'm not going to focus so much on where poll numbers are, or who should get elected or who will get elected. Rather, I'm going to focus on educating you on the path in which you could see stimulus or not see stimulus if certain events occur. All right, let's get to the details. First, if the House stays Democratic, well, that doesn't really do much of the analysis. The analysis is still the same. So that's an easy one. Let's get that one out of the way. The House remains Democratic. Let's go to the Senate. If the Senate stays Republican, despite whatever happens in the presidency, I got to tell you, at that point, Nancy Pelosi has to get off her high horse, because you will never, ever see stimulus of the magnitude she wants and the nature she wants anytime, ever. because her only hope is really not what happens in the presidency. Her only hope is that the Senate goes Democratic. If the Senate remains Republican, then there's two events that occur. One, and of course, these are my predict. This is my analysis. These aren't particularly facts because everything can change by the minute. First, if the Senate stays Republican, the first possibility of events occurring is that the Republicans do nothing. They do absolutely no stimulus, because by that point we will be looking at January, or we could potentially look at the day after election night, and the position will be unchanged, that the economy has improved, that you don't need stimulus, and we're not giving you any stimulus. That is one possibility. The next possibility, which I think is more likely if the Senate remains Republican, is that they will really butcher Nancy Pelosi's bill to death, and they'll say, hey, it's going to be our way or the highway, because ultimately you're not going to ever have a law. Let me explain what's important for you to understand, is that if the presidency goes Biden and the House remains Democratic as it is, but the Senate remains Republican as it is, basically everything is the same with the exception of the presidency. You still have Mitch in control, you still have Nancy in control, but now it's Joe instead of Donald. What will happen? No change. Because a bill starts at the House, then it goes to the Senate, and if it stops in the Senate, it never gets to Joe Biden's table. So ultimately, Joe Biden can say anything he wants to say. He can say anything he wants to do, anything he wants to say, but nothing will ever get on his table because it won't get past the Senate. So the Senate's makeup is really the major poll that you need, is the major poll and the major event you have to watch on election night, because ultimately, the ability to pass stimulus will be dependent upon that big event. All right, let's go to the next facet. If the Senate becomes Democratic and the House remains Democratic, which it probably will, even forgetting what happens with the presidency, what will happen with your stimulus? Okay, so first, my prediction is you'll see absolutely no activity before Inauguration Day. Why? Because you'll have a bunch of elder Republican senators who have lost, who are going to be PO'd, and they're going to be like, you know what? We lost. Thank you for the 30 years of giving us retirement pensions. We're leaving, and we're just packing up our bags really slowly between November 1st and January 1st. And so if you want a new bill, you do it with those new people you voted in, those Democrats, to replace our seats in the Senate. And that's what they'll do. So if the Senate goes from Republican to Democratic, don't expect anything to happen in the Senate until after Inauguration Day. So far, you're seeing two paths in which nothing is really helping you. Of these two paths, the one in which the Senate becomes Democratic is the one you're absolutely categorically, in my belief, very emphatically, never going to see stimulus until next year. But if the Senate remains under Mitch's control, you would likely see stimulus right after election night, because ultimately Nancy now has to deal with the fate, which is her bill is not the highway, that ultimately she's going to have to agree with Mitch McConnell. She's not going to be able to exclude Mitch McConnell anymore, and that you're going to go somewhere between a $3.4 trillion bill and a watered-down, waste-of-time Mitch bill, and be somewhere in the middle. So ironically, in a way, you want to root for the Senate remaining Republican if you want your stimulus in the next few weeks. Now, let's say it does go Democratic, the Senate, and then you look at January for your stimulus. I can't even believe I'm saying this. You look to January for your stimulus. Then how big would your stimulus be? This is why Purple Power has to be so incredibly strong and organized, because ultimately you could wait from here to January for stimulus, and then comes in Joe Biden, and then comes in those Democratic Senate members, and then comes in those Senate Democratic House members, and they may say, oh, we have an enormous stimulus bill. We have come back and we've revised and we made it really big because it's been so many months. And then we look at it, and there's still no darn stimulus checks in there that's of any value. There may be a lot of rent, there may be a lot of hazard pay, there may be a lot of eviction moratoriums, there may be a lot of CDC grants, but there may not be a lot of stimulus checks. And so ultimately, Purple Power cannot roll over because that period of time between election night and inauguration night is so critically important to make the voice very well heard. Next, how about the presidency? How does the presidency define the situation? Okay. Ultimately, if President Trump wins re-election, the House remains Democratic, and the Senate remains Republican, and there's literally no change, that everything is still the way it is, you would see stimulus right away. You would see stimulus right away because it's basically the status quo that everyone who had waited to give your stimulus relief, and that ultimately the stimulus relief would be passed in the days right after the election. Ironically, this is how life is a little strange. And you stay with me because we're at the 10-minute mark, a lot more coming up. Ironically, the status quo, which is seats for stimulus, reverse seats for stimulus, the status quo actually gets you their stimulus faster than anything else. Because the same people who were betting on flipping things, flipping House, flipping Senate, flipping the presidency, flip nothing, and that after election night, they realize, oh, okay, we're all back where we were. Okay, now we got to get this done. And that would get it done the fastest way. Next, if the presidency goes Biden, well, what does that mean? It means absolutely categorically nothing because it's dependent on what the Senate is. So if Biden is the president and Mitch is still in control of the Senate, good luck. You're not going to get your $5 trillion stimulus package or $20 billion stimulus package, trillion or whatever it is. You're never going to see it because the Republicans in the Senate will block it. Second, if the Senate, if every single body of Washington is Democratic, which would be the first time since the first 2 years of the Obama administration, then you would see sweeping, massive amounts of quote unquote stimulus, more about that in a second, come after Inauguration Day, not before. And that is one of the biggest events for the most stimulus for you. It would provide you the most stimulus, but would have the longest waiting time. Let me say that again. That would potentially give you the most stimulus of all these scenarios, but would have you wait the longest amount of time to actually get the money. You could end up seeing the money in March or April of next year. Where is this going? Let me explain this to you. What's important to understand is that there's going to be potentially a contested election. I told you to stay with me after the 10-minute mark, and here it comes. A contested election throws everything out this window. What is a contested election? Well, contested election is basically Bush-Gore 20 years later. If you remember Bush-Gore and the hanging Chad in South Florida, where wasn't sure who was the president, and it went to court, and it went to the Supreme Court, and went down, and went up, and went down in the courts. Ultimately, you didn't know who your president was. Well, that is potentially what will happen. It has been long reported that the president of the United States, Donald Trump, will contest the election if he loses, and that those contestings of elections will go throughout the courts, and they'll ultimately land at the Supreme Court with Judge Barrett. That's why Judge Barrett's nomination is so critical for Trump. He is apparently and allegedly teeing up a contested election. And Hillary Clinton, early on in the campaign, told Joe Biden, allegedly, that he should have constitutional lawyers in every jurisdictions across this country because a contested election will unfold. Now, I know you're going to drop in the comments, does that mean Nancy Pelosi is our next president? I'm just not going to do that in this video. There's too much for that alone. That will be another video. What I'm saying is that if President Trump is your president on a contested election, what does that mean for your stimulus? Ultimately, it doesn't really impact your stimulus if the Senate goes Democratic. So if the Senate goes Democratic, then it's still the same scenario. Ultimately, the important thing to understand is the Senate is the key for your stimulus. The presidency becoming Biden, the presidency becoming Trump, or the presidency becoming Trump contested election, it still makes no difference because if the Senate is bill controlled by Republicans, you will see a faster relief, not Nancy's relief, and that will be the relief they'll get in your hands. However, If the Senate is, uh, if there is a contested election, you potentially won't see any relief because ultimately a bill has to be signed by the president. So imagine on January 1st, there's a contested election. It's still in the courts. We still don't know who's our president. Who's going to sign your stimulus bill? Morris the cat? That is the problem. So let me recap because there's so much here in this video. This became a lot more educational than I even thought it was going to be. A contested election means there's no one to sign your stimulus bill come January 1st. It literally means that. And I don't think anyone would send anything to the presidency to be signed because it's a contested election, meaning you don't know who's really the president. Next, in a non-contested election, it's all dependent upon who wins the Senate. And so if Mitch wins the Senate, the Republicans retain ownership of the Senate, you would see your stimulus in your hand faster in the days after election night, as opposed to the Democratic Senate. Then you would see the stimulus in your hand in March or February of next year. Third, if everything stays exactly the same and nothing has changed and I still have the same darn shirts on, then you'd absolutely see your stimulus the fastest of all these permutations. Ironically, seats for stimulus means we don't like you, get out of there. But in a strange way, if every single person is reelected and no one leaves and all balances of power are still the same, then you would see your stimulus the fastest way possible. Boy, is that confusing or what? I hope it's not. I hope I made it clear because there's a lot of twists and turns and there's a lot for you to understand. What's important for you to understand is that we're 10 days away from the election. I hope you have voted. And I've not made this message clear before, so I'm going to make this message clear right now. You must vote. Not voting is not a solution. Some people have said on Twitter of the Purple Power family, I'm pissed off, I'm not voting. No. Because ultimately not voting puts the incumbent back in office. Not voting leads generally to a Republican winner. Not voting, lower voter turnout helps Republicans traditionally. And lower voter turnout helps incumbents traditionally. So not voting is not a solution. Ultimately, if someone pushes you around who's an incumbent and you're pissed off by the incumbent, why are you sitting around and not voting for that against that person? What you should be doing is voting against the person. I have voted. I have done mail-in voting. I have, because of Los Angeles, I have only 2 people up for that are the subject really of this channel, a representative and a president, and there was no senator up for re-election in California. So ultimately, I took all the messages to heart and did exactly what I preach on this channel and did no different. Ultimately, you need to understand that these people were owed you stimulus, that they failed to provide you stimulus, and that come election night, I hope they get the message. I hope the message is sent that they did not provide stimulus, and I hope there is a surprise on election night, that everyone who thought they could blame one another, that blame game didn't work. Go to the Funnest channel, subscribe, because we're going to get through this together. And I hope this was really one of the most educational videos of 28 that you enjoyed. Also like this video. Coming up next is Afternoons at LALATE at 3:30 p.m. the Pacific Standard Time. Almost forgot. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and stay at LA for more.